Hey guys, welcome to the Hypertrophy Hustle Show. So this week I'm speaking to Gadd. So this is someone I've wanted to speak to for a long time because I think it's very rare that you see an online coach and you see them actually doing stuff correctly. And I think it's quite interesting in the way he sort of transitioned from his normal sort of 9 to 5 into online coaching, and that's something that I want to dive into quite deeply here. But then also a lot of Jack's sort of philosophies around all this kind of stuff. And yeah, he seems like an intelligent, articulate guy, so I thought I'd have him on and sort of have a chat. So, Jack, what was that sort of transition like from the 9 to 5, the sort of rat race kind of thing, it wasn't sort of your passion, into online coaching? How did that happen for you? What was that kind of story like, and all that sort of stuff?
Cool. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on. Absolute honour. Especially seeing kind of the guests that you've had on. I do really appreciate being asked.
Thank you.
So the transition, it wasn't something that came overnight. It took a long ass time. I think a lot of people now, when they see online coaching, like from looking at it from the outside, I think a lot of people think they can just leave their job, be an online coach, and then overnight have a massive pool of clients. And there's lots of people out there that set these unrealistic expectations and they try and sell you this dream. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So for me, it took me the best part of probably about a year and a half to fully get to that point. And it came about wanting to be an online coach from when I first competed. So I know it's like quite cliche for that to happen, like a competitor competes and then they want to start online coaching. But for me, it was the love for seeing changes in my physique and how I could help others. So like sort of during the time when I was actually competing in 2015, because I was learning and also developing my physique and getting to just unknown levels of condition, which I've never before, to be honest. So it's just like everything was just so new to me. And I had people coming up to me in the gym asking me questions online. There was just DMs all the time about how I did this, and I just spent the majority of like my competition prep season not only obviously dieting for myself, but just helping others and learning massively. So like just kind of gathering all of the information that I could have within that time, not even really thinking about wanting to become a coach. But sort of towards the end of the season, I started to think to myself, like, this is something I really, really enjoy. Fitness has always been a big passion within my life. I enjoyed like the process of going from the starting point to the ending point. And I was enjoying seeing that within people I was talking to. Like, I was just giving people just basic advice on Instagram or like just in the gym. And then I'd see them like 4 months later and they'd lost like 20 pounds. And for me, like just to kind of feel that I had a small impact on that just made me feel so much more happy about anything I'd ever done in my work career. So what I was doing before, I was basically fitting electric and gas meters. So I was basically just putting those into people's houses. And that wasn't massively fulfilling for me. And this kind of gave me something which was fulfilling. And at the time I was being coached as well. So I knew it was something which I could actually make a living from, because that's obviously the most important thing as well, is actually being able to pay your bills and being able to live. Like that is obviously what a part of online coaching is about, is actually being able to live. And I sort of thought to myself, like, I can do this, like this is something that I want to do. So within sort of at the end of my prep, from sort of the end of 2015 all the way up until the end of 2016 and the start of 2017, I just again took another year of actually learning, attending seminars, courses, just basically just getting knowledge to a point where I felt comfortable enough to actually help people. And then I took my first, I think it was 5 to 10 clients on for free. So I didn't bother charging for this. Like for me, it was just new. Like I wasn't bothered about the money because I was already in a job. So there was no rush to actually even need any kind of extra income. I wanted just to see if I enjoyed it, because I think a lot of the time, a lot of people don't experience the enjoyment of online coaching and actually how to experience it before asking for money from people. So I just spent, I think it was around about 4 to 6 weeks just testing my services, doing check-ins with clients every single week, seeing how they responded, getting them results, seeing what they thought of the service, what they thought of me. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled, really. Like ever since, like I spent the whole of 2017 to 2018 actually doing online coaching. Normal jobs, so I would work weekends and evenings. Again, throughout that year, just developing learning through not only obviously kind of the workshops and courses, but actually developing learning from clients as well. Because there's only so much you can really, I think, learn online and through seminars. You're going to learn the most of what you can through your clients. Like, this is what I found massively is actually when it comes to visually seeing your clients and visually getting data back and seeing obviously what changes work for them and what certain things work for them, that's when you're going to be able to put those things into practice. Obviously using kind of the evidence base that you see, using that obviously on your clients and obviously practicing that and then visually actually seeing that work. I think once it's actually put into practice, then it visually comes more clear instead of it obviously just kind of being on like a paper or on an article or such, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like in that respect though, when because I know that you did it for free, like, do you find it's hard to get them to adhere and then even see the practical stuff? Because it's like for instance, I was talking with, I don't know if you know Jack Rayner, and we were saying, we were saying like, if you just ask your friends, like if you try and get your friends to just do your programming and you try and get them to do it, they're not going to fucking do it. So were these like followers or were these people that you sort of you'd seen in person, or how did you sort of find that initial sort of people? Because like for myself, I'd done it before, like probably a year ago. I tried to be like, hey, I'll coach you for free. It was super informal. I just put up a story. No one responded, not a single person. And I was like, fuck. Then I was so scared about launching coaching in general. And then when I did launch coaching, I sort of made it much more grand. Like I put out a big promo on all the podcasts. I put out promos, released a bunch of podcasts, and tried to just funnel everything towards it. And I was only aiming for 5 clients because I didn't know if I'd fucking get any. And surprise, I actually got some. And that was cool. And do you find... Do you regret offering it for free, or do you think it made a difference, or would you recommend it?
I don't regret offering it for free. I think the only time I would have regretted offering it for free is if the clients I actually took on were not who I wanted to. But coming back to kind of like screening the clients as such, throughout sort of 2016 all the way up until I first put out that post about wanting to take online clients on for free, I built Instagram up to a point where it was quite popular. I was using a lot of things on If It's Your Macros. Like if anyone kind of is watching this and they scroll back down through my feed, you'll just see endless pictures of food porn and pictures of useless content with like a protein cheesecake for just no reason, just for likes and comments. And I used to get just thousands of them, like when Instagram was really popular. And I started to realize, like, if I wanted to coach, this wasn't the way I would actually need to distribute content. So I started actually putting out useful stuff, more gym related. Obviously, engagement dropped because people weren't there for that. But for the people that were part of that If It Fits Your Macros crowd, and they did actually want to develop their training, that was kind of the first initial people that I attracted. And when I came to put out a post, I basically just put out a screenshot of just saying, looking to take on X amount of clients for free. I will not charge for this service, but you need to work hard. Please apply here. And I think I had about 30 applications at the time. So I was obviously like given so much choice of who I really wanted to work with. So I could actually kind of screen all of their consult forms. If they just had one word replies, they would be deleted and I wouldn't look at them because at the end of the day, if someone's not willing to put time into a consult form, they're not going to be willing to stick to a coaching service. For the people that were so in depth and they were my target market. So for me, I'm a majority, obviously at the minute now, like kind of are more contest prep based. But at the time, I was looking at just working with males sort of around about 18 to 30 who were looking to drop body fat. So at that time, that was kind of like the people that I screened from the consult form, and that's who I took on. And it worked out incredibly well because they all adhered. Like they all were awesome. For the amount of time that I worked with them, they were fantastic. And I think out of the 5 that I ended up, or like 5 or 10 that I took on, more than half stayed. So it was almost like, because I chose them and because I got the results, they obviously then stayed on. And that's a great way to obviously start your client base, is I think working for free for people that you're going to enjoy working with. And if you can get them results and then offer them a great kind of price to stay on with you for putting their trust in you, then they're forever going to be like your client or your friend for helping them that way. So that's kind of how I got from the point of obviously having them for free to them becoming clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and do you, I find something that I find quite difficult because, for instance, if we compare someone, I'm trying to think 2 people on the complete other end of the spectrum, but maybe you would think someone like an Eric Helms, and then on the other end of the spectrum we'd think like a David Lade or like a like classic influencer. And it's like you have the pure conveyor of information, and then you have someone who will display their physique in a sort of that kind of way. And like obviously your physique's fucking insane, so it's like you've kind of got to run that balance. How do you personally do it? Because I find, for myself, I
think it's putting out performance. Go on.
I think we just lagged out a little bit there. It's like for myself, I try to, I do use it because it's like it's my transformation is something I can utilize. Like it's quite a drastic transformation, and it's very like with my transformation, it's like I can utilize it to get me likes and get me comments, but I'm not sure. And I want to get your thoughts on this. How much do you think the physique sort of transfers to the coaching and vice versa? Because I think it's it's not like we look at IFBB pros, right? It's always we say all the time that they don't have the knowledge, they've just got the physique, and it's just like it's like the classic stereotype, and maybe it's not true for all of them, but we generally assume that. And how do you sort of run that balance personally?
I think, first of all, with regards to like the transformation side of things, people, yes, that's cliche saying, people buy people. They buy into you and your story. So I think if your transformation is going to be a part of a story which that client can relate to, and then obviously you can back it up with things that you've done to get to that point, and not just ate chicken and rice and broccoli out of Tupperware, and you can actually explain how you got there, explain how you built the muscle, and explain how you dieted. With the transformation alongside it, I think you're going to put yourself in a fantastic position, because not only are you obviously being real about your story, you're talking about how you got from A to B, but you're also talking about that you know what you're talking about as well. Because a lot of the time, like you'll see a transformation, and then it would just be like the date. There won't be anything behind it. So I think if you can have backing up behind it about how you got there, and not just it happened overnight, and expect people to then buy a program because you've made a transformation. Like I said, I think you're going to put yourself in a great place with that side of thing.
You feel like it's more about actually giving that education, I guess, and sort of showing like I have some knowledge. I'm not just a pretty face or some pretty dance, I guess.
Yeah, I think it definitely, there needs to be a mix with the education, because I think if a lot of people just see the education side of things all the time, they might then not know about you. And I think a lot of people want to know about you and how you've got there, because it then gives them hope that they can get there too. So as long as you can be informative and then obviously be yourself and show yourself as well, I think that's a great balance to have. And that's what I try and mix up, is have a mix of trying to be informative and like give it within the realms of what I know, and then also show what I've achieved as well, because it then shows people what can be done.
No, exactly. This is why I was previously coached by Steve, and it's like the reason I chose him is because I think our personalities, obviously I had him on the podcast, we had a chat, so it's like I had that unique sort of, I was lucky enough to do that, and it's like, I don't know, I really liked how our personalities meshed, and it's like, and when I was inquiring with other coaches, it was pretty obvious pretty fast that our personalities didn't match. And it's I think that's quite damn crucial, and that's something, like I literally started coaching like 2 weeks ago, so I'm still learning the ropes. But I guess I've been very lucky in sort of being able to speak to these people who can show me the ropes, I guess.
I think that's it. I think if you've been coached before, you're already going to be at a better start than people who've never been coached. Because actually getting coached by someone with experience, like as much as Steve as well, like his experience is just phenomenal, and what he's doing for the industry now is just incredible.
Yeah.
Like if you can get a coach which is getting good results and obviously being informative about how he's getting these results and using the practices that they should be using, then you're going to put yourself in that best position. Like for me, my first coach was Tom Mack. I don't know whether you know him, Body by Mac, and my personality matched with his personality, and so Tom will forever be kind of someone I'll prep with, because our personalities match. We both are on the same wavelength with everything, so there won't be any kind of cross of me questioning what he's doing, because I trust what he does. Because at the end of the day, we're both on the same page with everything. And I think if you're on the same page with your kind of coach and you can agree with what they're doing, and obviously still question them sometimes when you're not sure, and if they can give you answers back, then like you would have probably done with Steve, then you're going to learn from that as well, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, this is why I know I'm going to prep with Steve. Like when I prep, I know it'll be with Steve. Just because it's like I trust his judgment, and we get along fundamentally as people. And it's just I admire him as a human being more than just a educator. So it's sort of, I don't know, it gives that extra level of depth, and it's kind of one thing that I thought was quite interesting though is, like, obviously we touched on it briefly off air, and we won't go into details obviously, but in the British community there's a lot of depth between the personalities of individual coaches or educators or anything like that, and obviously someone like Steve, very evidence-based, and that's sort of where he prides himself on that, and that's sort of who he is. Where do you sort of, how do you personally go about sort of navigating the evidence and then sort of tying that in with using experience to coach clients? Because it's a very complicated topic, I would say.
Yeah, I think you've got to have a mix of everything, and understand that not every client is the same when it comes to the coaching element of things. Like you can obviously have the anecdotes, which you're going to get back from the client and how you've done things. You've got the evidence-based, and then obviously the research behind it. But you've got to have them all together to be able to create this process to get obviously one person to another place. Like I'm just trying to think of an example of what would correlate here. So obviously, like, let's just say like a contest prep, the rate of loss, which is something which is recommended for certain clients. So obviously they can maintain maximal muscle. Let's just say for that, obviously like 1% of body weight per week. I've had clients who have been like, let's just say later on in a prep, and they're losing a lot faster. And while that's obviously going against what the evidence would suggest, the anecdotal side of things is they're not losing any muscle mass because their training performance is still good. Their recovery is awesome, and they're still on track for their show. So that's kind of like the scenario I'd use there, is that yes, I think having the following of the evidence base and following that through and having that as a basis is the best place for it. But then not being afraid to go out of the scope if then other factors obviously align how you would want them to. I hope that makes sense. It made sense in my head.
It makes sense out loud too. Yeah, and I think, I don't know, it's so complicated, right? Because we have the people who say, nope, science is fucking dumb and blah, blah, blah. And then, that's just pure dogmatism, I would say. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where people, I would say this is the people who don't truly understand science, because we can't obviously use science. And like I was just speaking to Jacob Skippis and Steve, and they outlined this very well, probably better than I can now. It's like we have to marry the two, and it's like, I think from what I've seen of you, it's like you seem to do a good job of marrying the two without sort of having to be like, without having to reference a study every second sentence. And it's like, I think we should give science respect, right? But then, like if someone's in contest prep and they've got this extremely context-specific situation, it's like, how are you going to I don't know. You need to apply experience there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I think you can then almost bring it back to the massive debate in the industry about RAR and training failure at the minute. Like, there's just so much going on with that.
Yeah.
And there's obviously going to be people with experience that have always trained with failure their whole life, and because it's worked for them, that's the only method they'll use, and they won't listen to the other studies on it because their mind can be so one-minded on obviously what that approach is. I think that's why I absolutely loved when Jordan Peters is now doing RAR and actually just proves that someone with that kind of knowledge and that kind of muscle mass can switch to doing something because he's willing to try it, whereas so many people just not willing to try it. And it's funny because now he's doing it. You're now starting to see other people who have been one-minded doing it now doing RAR.
I think I know the exact people you're talking about, man. It's like you'll see them begin to change their language around it and sort of being less dogmatic, because it's like.
And I think it's a shame that people need to see someone so big in the industry changing their mind to then change their own mind.
Yes, well, it's like, hard to not be dogmatic.
Yeah, I agree, 100%, 100%.
It's like that's the thing that I often default to, and it's annoying. Is I find it like I'm 20 years old and I'm an emotional teenager who gets angry about obesity, and I get angry about some dumb shit people do, and that's like a common thing on the podcast where it's like I get really pissed off at shit, and I know it's not evidence-based, and I know it's dogmatic, and I still do it, and it's very hard to draw yourself away from that. And I mean, recognizing that is the first step, but it's like there are 16 other steps like that, and then I don't know, to communicate science effectively and talk in a non-dogmatic way is crazily hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then one thing you mentioned, sort of the whole RIR versus failure, sort of blah blah. I think the interesting part of this debate is the experience of the client and what they've done before, and then how you apply that. So in terms of this, you've got a lot of experience in terms of working with people. How is there a situation where you'll just use one, or do you always use one, or is it sort of a combination of both, or a ratio, or how do you go about sort of implementing this? And do you give any weight to the argument of when they're new they must go to failure, or they must do RAR, or they must do this when they're new, or does it change with experience? Or
I think when someone's newer to proper progressive training, the whole kind of RAR approach may not suit them off like straight away. I think even maybe just a few mesocycles, not necessarily giving them targets with reps in reserve, but just potentially just seeing what their lifts look like. Because I think for a coach, that's your biggest tool. We're not able to see them in person because obviously we're working online. So having the ability to see someone's videos and see what they just normally work towards, and not necessarily set boundaries straight away, see kind of what their intensity is like with a certain rep goal. And then from there, you can almost say, okay, he's already pushing quite hard, because you might get a complete beginner who is already training to failure. Like I've seen it, and it's easy to just say beginners shouldn't train to failure, or no, beginners should train to failure because they don't know where reps in reserve is. But you may have someone who has been totally ingrained in sport for their whole life, and they do not give up with anything, and they've now transitioned to bodybuilding. They're technically a beginner in bodybuilding, but if they're training to failure straight away, they're already kind of potentially setting themselves up for like not progressive training. So I think it's all relative to the person. Like someone can be a beginner, but they can still train very, very well. I've seen it before. I've seen it in clients. So I think the first thing first is getting video feedback, seeing how someone trains, and then getting an analysis of what you want to set them from there. And obviously as they become more advanced and you've got more advanced clients, I think personally having a mixture of the two is a great thing. I personally don't stick to one. I like to have a mixture of the two throughout my mesocycles and the ones that I program, because it keeps enjoyment there. because at the end of the day, we lift for fun, and also we lift to try and progress ourselves. A lot of the time, a lot of clients, they don't want to stop 3 to 4 reps short of failure, and that's understandable for some. And if they're happy that maybe they may not progress as fast as someone who uses an RAR approach sensibly over a mesocycle, then that's fine. But as long as, at the end of the day, as long as they're progressing forwards, that's what we're obviously looking for them to achieve.
Yeah,
I think
we're almost at the danger of, as an industry, of being too RAR heavy now, potentially. Like, I think something, Jacob Skepis, JPS.
Yeah. I attended this seminar last weekend, actually.
Oh, really?
Or the other.
Bath
one in Bath. Yeah.
Oh wow, lucky! I would die to do that, man.
It was so good.
Yeah, it looked fucking fantastic. But something JPS sort of put out a while ago was kind of effectively. I kind of think it's a spectrum, right? And I mean, we don't have to dive completely into this, but it's something that I think is important to sort of think about. Is kind of for instance, especially with clients, right? It's like if they're doing an isolation movement, and we're prescribing it 3 to 4 RAR. And a high rep range, it's kind of like, I personally what I've been prescribing with clients is in isolations, I start at a 2 RAR at the start of a mesocycle for if they can even understand RAR. And then it really depends. And I mean, I'm new to this, new as fuck to this, but is that something sort of the kind of approach that you think could work, or?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think starting sort of around about a 2 RAR for accessories is a great idea. I mean, I sort of prescribe around about 1 to 2 reps in reserve for accessories, especially for those higher rep ranges. I think the only thing with that is it does get a lot harder to gauge. If someone's got a 12 to 15 rep set or 10 to 12 and they start to feel the burn on the 8th rep, they might mistake the burn for only then having 1 or 2 reps left in them.
Yes.
When in reality is they could always
left.
they've got another 12 left. If they pause for 1 to 2 seconds before igniting the lift again, they may have another 5 to 6 reps left in them. So I think, for accessories, I do like sometimes seeing on the last set them take it to sort of their technical failure, and then I'll get them to film that. I get a lot of videos in the first week of a new client coming on board, because I want to just be able to see how they train. And yes, it's obviously kind of one of those things where it's tedious for them to get so many videos, but
it's unbelievably useful.
Yeah,
it's invaluable. We can't just use spreadsheets. Obviously a beautiful spreadsheet can do a lot, and we all love spreadsheets, and they're beautiful and spreadsheet porn, but it's I don't know. We need that. It's the closest thing we can get to it.
That's it. I mean, unless you obviously physically see them in person, but obviously that becomes very difficult if your client is on the other side of the world. So,
I have a client in Rio. It's am I going to get to Rio anytime soon?
Exactly. So if you can see a video and if you can see how it looks, and at least make a judgment call, because even in a video, it can be hard to tell sometimes, especially you watch someone like Matt Ogus train their kind of failure. It looks like they've got loads more left in them because the form is so good, and he doesn't tend to make faces when he gets to the last rep. So it's just finding a good eye for what you feel people have got left in them. And then obviously, judging it from there.
Well, Bryce Lewis as well, similar kind of shit. It's man will be doing a 1 RM and it looks the same as his 3 to 4 RAI. If you exclude bar speed, it's I don't know. When you get so good at lifting, it's and you don't have to, I don't know, get emotional with now. It's something that I struggle with a lot, because obviously with my spine condition, it's I find I'm commonly so unstable, and it's I'm on bench press every time my right leg it's having a seizure just because it's trying to maintain stability. It's definitely it's intriguing.
And that's it. Again, the issue might arise with someone's form being so bad that they may think that they've only got 1 rep left in them, but if their form was better, they've probably got another 3 or 4. It's just so many different variables which are going to come into play, and that's why I think having a basis of RAR is good. But I think definitely for sure there needs to be some technical failure work in, which needs to be relayed back to you as a coach to be able to see this, to be able to judge it like wholeheartedly.
Is there anything you think like? Because I obviously everyone wants to be an online coach nowadays. Like I resisted it for so long because I was like, what gives me the right kind of? Like I've talked to all the smart people, but it's like just speaking to the smart people does not justify my right to do it. In a way, and I don't know. Do you think there's certain things that people should? I don't know, not necessarily that they should achieve, but certain prerequisites, I guess, or because it's like you can want to do it, but it's like, are you going to do it well? Like, I don't know. It's kind of like a judgmental thing potentially, but is there anything you think kind of are probably good ideas to do before you start online coaching?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to tell because obviously, like with contest prep, a lot of the time you'll hear many people say that you would have needed to have prepped before coaching prep athletes. And I thought of this, and my immediate thought was, yes, like you need to do this, you need to prep first. But I didn't actually think at the time about certain specific people in the industry now who are incredibly knowledgeable and they're actually coaching prep athletes and they've never actually stepped on stage themselves. And for me, like when I actually thought about that, and obviously there is a couple people now like I do know of that do that, it then says to me, okay, do they actually need to compete? Like if they're actually getting results for these people, they're doing it in an ethical way, and they're not like damaging these people's health and their lives, but they're still getting epic results, but they've never stepped on stage. Like my initial thoughts was always, yes, you need to step on stage. You need to understand how it feels for a client. But is it then a necessity? Potentially not. Like my views change a lot over time. Like they change a lot.
Probably.
And I sort of see. Yeah, it's it. I mean, I was always kind of really one-minded to that until I was reminded of a few people who are like just stupidly knowledgeable and they're actually getting great results.
No, exactly. I completely agree there. Is there anything you think like maybe experience-wise or like just a general feeling or something or I don't know, like I guess a knowledge base, but I guess it's the Dunning-Kruger effect sets in pretty hard for most people. Like I literally thought I knew everything there was to know about the gym 1.5 years in, and I was a fucking idiot. Like I didn't know shit, and I was tiny, and like I thought I'd reached my genetic limit too. Like I was like a year in, gained like 10 kilos.
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to coaching and getting into it, there's the fear factor of it's not knowing everything. I certainly had that. I think everyone I've spoken to has had that problem with they see people like Eric, people like Dr. Mike, like, and so envious of what they know that we then don't feel good enough to help or coach people. And while that's obviously true, like not worthy enough to coach those like coaching clients, because obviously we don't know everything, and obviously nor does like Eric and nor does Dr. Mike. They don't know everything there is to know, but they know so much, like it's unreal. So when it comes to actually taking action, I think a lot of people are almost afraid of actually getting to that point of actually starting. But I think we've got to remember that there's clients out there which don't specifically need us to know absolutely everything for them to get the result that they're looking for. Yeah. If that makes sense. Because someone that Steve Hall would coach would be obviously probably in the evidence-based kind of community within agreement of those side of things, more knowledgeable. And then someone who is potentially newer starting out might not need that kind of client to come on board. They might just be looking for kind of general fat loss, getting a little bit leaner, learning a little bit more about nutrition, and maybe dropping like 10 or 12 pounds. Like, and I think it's all specific. And yes, there's obviously going to be certain things which you'll need to know. And I think if you can get a client a result and also within that time explain to them how they actually got there, and you're giving them an explanation of things, then you're on the right path. And if you struggle to actually potentially understand why your client has got this result, then maybe it would be a good thing to go and learn extra about why they've actually got to that point. Because if you've given someone a plan or a training program or a nutrition plan and you're not sure how they actually got that end result and the actual variables and factors that got them there, then potentially some extra education might be required.
Yeah, and something that I was just thinking of then, it's kind of paradoxical. It's like the further down you get the track of knowledge, and I guess the more you'll find it harder to relate to a Gen Pop client, I guess. And
I'd agree massively.
Yeah, and then as well that comes along with that is, for instance, someone like Steve or Mike or Eric. It's like those people attract extremely evidence-based people, and they are the overthinkers of the fitness industry, and that's who they're going to attract. And then I guess if you're new, and this is why myself, I think I literally talk to the smartest motherfuckers in the world. Like, these people are so mind-blowingly intelligent, and like the more I talk to these people, the more intelligent I'm going to get. And if I don't start coaching now, it's like, and then when I do start coaching, if it's Gen Pop, I won't have built the skills to communicate to the layman's or to the Gen Pop, which I think is, I don't know, it's paradoxical in a way. It's like it's kind of the argument for starting earlier rather than later. So I think if you're even thinking about it commonly, you might have some sort of competence.
Yeah, I agree. And it's that thing that comes back to, like you said, there's always going to need to be coaches for the Gen Pop that aren't looking to know the education and the evidence behind stuff. They just want the result, and that's okay, I think, as long as they're still getting the result in a way where they're not being affected, like kind of through their health or anything. And it's that thing that you yourself, you're probably going to attract those clients within the evidence-based circle, because you speak to them all the time, you put out content based on that. And I think, it comes down to that kind of content you put out is what you attract, I believe, in my opinion.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like you sort of were an imposter? Did you get those feelings at the start?
Yeah, massively, 100%. Massively at the start, like when I really didn't know as much as I do now. Like I did feel like that. But the quicker I got thrown into the deep end, and the quicker I knew I needed to learn, the more knowledgeable I got.
Yeah, I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than I've learned. Like, man, there's so much shit you can't learn until you actually start programming for people.
I agree,
it's just, like, you don't think about it. You don't know it exists.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, like we learn all these intense concepts. And like all my learning has been through interviews, right? And it's like, they go, it's all the stuff you can actually say out loud, but there's things you just can't say out loud, or they don't work. They're not explained out loud very often, and I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to learn right now, which is the skills. I'm on a Padachi placement right now, and the practitioner I'm with, he sort of teaches me a lot of this kind of stuff around how to communicate to these kind of people. And I guess is in your experience, do those skills get better with time, like explaining these kind of things?
Yeah, I find like my communication at the start for specific things over time was not as good as it is now. I think the more my clients have questioned why I'm again, he's barking. The more my clients like question what I'm doing and why like we're doing reasonings, I think the better I get at explaining the concepts, if that makes sense, and communicating that a lot better as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. It's like, like explaining these. It's hard I found it quite difficult for myself, because the only people I talk to are people smarter than me. It's like I'm talking to these people on the podcast, and these people are experts in their field, man. Like yourself, you're an expert online coach. When I talk to Mike Israel, it's like I'm shitting myself. Like, this he's like one of the most knowledgeable people on the fucking planet, man. It's like it's like, and then I'll talk to my friend who doesn't sort of know what a calorie is, and it's like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
I've noticed my clients tend to be quite knowledgeable, which is quite cool, and they're like, it's nice for me, but I don't know if I'll ever sort of have that experience of like, this is the pure layperson, they've never even heard of a calorie, and it's like beginning to explain these basic concepts, man. It's like, I don't know, it's difficult.
I think for yourself, when like you said, obviously you explain to friends at the minute and they don't know what a calorie is. I think for you, you'll find that even this happened to me. Like I was really tested about what I knew and the confirmation of it when I started getting clients who were clever and they were of the field. Like when that started coming in, then I had to start explaining things in a way which would make sense to them.
Yeah.
Because if you explain it to them in a way that you would explain it to someone of like general population who doesn't know it, there's two different methods of how you explain things. There needs to be a level of like the switch in communication for the certain person, so they can obviously have that trust in you.
And it's even just like specific words. It's like I often now speak like those people, and like the intelligent people, and I'll use their big words and all that, and I find commonly, I don't know, people my age don't talk like that. Like, I don't know, I talk, because it's so much of my conversation, man. It's like, so much of it is with these insanely intelligent people, and I'll talk in very scientific terms, and then going back to talking like a normal human being is weird.
It's funny you say it. It's like when I'm talking to like sort of my clients who aren't that knowledgeable, I say like, yeah, like when you're eating this specific macro, but like when you sort of say it to people who are more clever, like, yeah, when you're assimilating this nutrient, you just change your saying, and they mean the exact same thing, but it's just like because of what you want it to sound like, you make it sound more clever than it needs to be.
I don't know.
At the end, it sounds pointless when you say it like that because they're both the exact same thing, but it's that thing of just making you sound a bit more clever.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like when I talk on my stories, right, I just go full like how I would talk to these people, and it's like, you don't know. The people viewing my stories are not those people all the time. Like, it's obviously they're probably, I'd say, of above average knowledge around fitness. But like it's such a wide, and I mean that's the common battle. Like, do you find with your content, do you find it hard to gauge how much knowledge to assume the listener or watcher has?
Yeah, I think like because of what I'm trying to get now is more of a contest prep broad based with clients. Like, I think you've got to take in that content which is digestible in an easy way and not super informative that it puts someone off. So I think bringing back to like real world examples and just using simple words and not making it seem like it's this massive like task ahead with contest prep. When you could just make it sound a lot more simple than it needs to be. So I just think with your kind of talking for your specific niche, that who you're wanting to work with is always going to be relevant. So yes, you can use specific words to talk about contest prep, which would make sense to prep athletes watching your stories. But if you're working with like sort of general population, general fat loss, using weird words which don't make any sense. And if I was a client who was a general pop and I was looking for a coach and they were using all these fancy words, I would probably just go with someone who was a bit more simple, understood what worked and what was needed, and made it more enjoyable for me as the listener.
Yeah, like this is why I chose Steve, right? Because I think he was on the right level for me, and I think as his knowledge increases, I think it's increasing at such a good rate that I don't know, it works well for the rate that I'm increasing at. And I know Steve will probably always be higher intelligence than me in terms of this stuff. Like he'll probably always know more than me, or like I know he'll be at the kind of level where I won't. He will be teaching me things, and it's really, I don't know. It was really obvious choice.
But that's the thing. Like you can learn from Steve and then relay it in a way to then your clients if they're different to you. So you've got the beauty of knowing the higher end of that knowledge,
Yes.
and then almost like not downgrading it, but making it easier to digest for
Yes.
then your specific client.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's like that's kind of the game we all play. It's like figuring out how to communicate science. It's like this is why I think someone like Jeff Nippard's insanely cool, because it's like he takes these concepts, man. He puts them down to like, I don't know, beautiful videos that are nicely shot. They're fun to watch. They're actually interesting, and like someone like myself can take some sort of stuff away from them, but then also someone who's like Gen Pop can as well. And it's like, yeah, maybe a lot of it will be like stuff I've heard a billion times, but I'm sure there'll be like one or two specific, either something from a study or something more advanced that someone who obviously nerds out about this stuff can kind of get from it.
Yeah, I agree. So you've got a great way of like translating the content for two different niches of people on the kind of side that want to know about the studies, and then people who just want to know.
Yeah, I think we cut out a little bit there, but one thing that I really want to touch on is, and I think it's a really difficult topic. Like it's something that's kind of taboo. So in terms of like, and this is something that I say quite commonly. It's like being a fitness practitioner. You treat yourself sort of as like an ethical medical practitioner in a way. And I think how do you personally go about sort of jumping that sort of divide between sort of treating yourself like a medical practitioner, acting in like an ethical way, because there's no governing body that regulates online coaching, and then you throw something in the mix like eating disorders and I mean, with bodybuilding, people will commonly be like, oh, blah blah, bodybuilders all have eating disorders and yada yada yada, which I think for the large part, like that's not a stupid argument. Like it's definitely not. But I mean, the stereotype is the stereotype for a reason potentially.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see what like Eric Helms and Jake Lennardon are doing recently. It's sort of putting more light on this subject, and also JPS as well. It's I don't know. It's a really, really fucking tough one, because it's like, okay, if they have any hint of eating disorder or any hint of body image disorder, do you just refer them out, or like, how do you personally sort of run that boundary?
Yeah, I think you've got to take all of the evidence into perspective of like why someone would be feeling that way, and if it's something which you feel is not potentially doable in your scope, then you can refer it out. Like for someone just finishing a prep, they're likely going to have eating problems for a little while, and they probably don't need to be referred out to a specialist. They probably just need to be normal again and feel normal. And for you as a coach, I think you can see that in a client, and you can get them to the point of where normality is without necessarily them referring them out. But then someone with like an actual problem which is persisting for a long time, then you would have to admit to yourself, can you help this person? Then you would then refer them out to someone who is a specialist in that field and actually can deal with the issues that client might be having. Yeah. But I think jumping the gun straight away of like someone coming out of a prep and having like a week where they eat the world and calling it a binge eating disorder, it's not. It's just because there's now no goal. They can eat again. Body fat is so low. The hunger's now coming back because they have actually started eating probably since the show. So that's just going to take a while to get to where they feel normal again. And we can use things to actually, within our kind of scope of practice, things like the recovery diet, getting to the point where they're going to feel better quickly. And if they're still not feeling fantastic or not actually feeling normal and they're still binging 4 or 5 months down the line, then potentially then it would be a problem, I think, which then needs to be looked at. But I think giving us a fair chance of being able to sort an issue, if it is something we feel we can sort, is, I think, the best approach to take. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's a very mature and nuanced approach to it, because I think people can get very black and white with these things. Like, it's the same way people talk about spines, right? It's like a lot of my audience has scoliosis, and a small percentage nowadays, they have scoliosis, and they'll have some sort of spine condition, and people are almost anything to do with the spine. People don't say a word about it because they're scared as shit to say anything about it, because it's like a medical problem, or
Yeah.
I don't know. And like, we have to give medical practitioners respect, right? But there's that does not mean that that does not mean there's no application for this. It's like, in terms of like treating diabetes, right? Like, something that's really troubling to me is, I study podiatry. We deal with a lot of people with diabetes, man. But podiatrists have terrible, terrible education around nutrition and exercise. Like, it's just like, we're beginning to think more and more that diabetes is a calorie influenced disease. It's obviously like sugar and blah blah blah. That does play a role, but it's so complex. And like, I've got my degree is the best out of Australia and New Zealand. There's like 10 degrees in total, and my one's the highest ranked. And our knowledge of that is abysmal. Like, they didn't mention, I've said this a billion times on the podcast, people are probably getting sick of me saying it, but it's like they didn't mention calories on a slide about treating obesity. It's just like, fuck it, I don't know, like, I get that that's not how you treat obesity, by telling people that calories exist, but I don't know, it's like we're not allowed to even touch these issues.
People are scared to actually give the real reasoning behind things, and obviously obesity being the issue, calories is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to fix that. It's just people pussyfoot around what is the actual problem. And yeah, like you said, they're afraid to say it.
Yeah, so I think people don't think they have the authority. Like something I was just speaking to Steve and Jacob about is, like, both of them, Jacob's now pursuing it, but both of them for a long period of time have not had any form of higher education, especially none in exercise science. Like, Jacob was doing a law degree, and Steve has a degree in geography and something else. So it's like they just don't relate. Yeah. And like, do you have any form of higher education or anything?
No, I don't know.
No, exactly. And it's like, you're a fantastic coach. So it's like, like, there's obviously a balance to be struck there, and like, yeah, higher education has a point, but like, if you just have higher education and nothing else, you have nothing. Like, if you can't actually apply that, what the fuck is the point?
Yeah,
like, cool, you can do research, but it probably has no practical application.
Yeah, exactly. And like, another thing you always hear as well is, like, if someone's not losing weight, you just blame it on hormones or blame it on thyroid, and then it's be like, that's an easy way out for referring someone to a specialist, which then might just be another massive range of issues, which they might not be tracking calories properly. They might not be logging correctly in their MyFitnessPal, which then scopes out their calorie amount for the day. And there's just so many different things which, before we jump to the gun of what it might be, we should then have at least a period of trying to fix first, if that makes sense.
No, I agree, yeah. I mean, yeah. The problem with this all is, though, like, obviously, like, there's some terrible coaches, and that's the problem. It's like the problem that with there being no vetting system is, like, with podiatrists, right? It's like, you can't get that shit of a podiatrist. But like, as we know, like, there's some terrible coaches in the UK and everywhere else. It's like, I don't know. And maybe I'm being dogmatic and thinking they're terrible coaches, and maybe their approach works, but I think there's just a bit too. It's very hard to have a coach that actually thinks in a scientific, rational, sort of critical thinking way, like yourself or like Steve or any one of those sort of companies.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a difficult subject to really get around, isn't it? Because I think there's always going to be people there who will just do the total opposite of what things like the science says, and they'll still get the result because it will probably work. But will the client come out feeling like the processes, one, help their education of how they actually got there, and two, if they come out of it in a healthy position, and are they able to then carry that on?
Yeah.
Something I really like, or I think should be part of online coaching, is your clients coming away with the knowledge to then do their own program,
Yes.
or at least know what they need to do nutrition wise to keep that result that they've got. And if you getting that, and obviously it might be an issue with accountability and everything else like that, or adherence, you've got to question whether what you're coaching is actually getting is actually helping them for the long run as well. Because short-term results are great, but long-term, for me, the best thing is when I've coached someone, they've left and they've carried on getting further results.
Yeah.
That to me says I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's what happened with me and Steve. It's like I've made the best gains of my life, and I've been training for 4 years now. It's like I was with Steve start of this year-ish, and it's like this past 8 months I've made the best gains of my life because he taught me how. And it's like, I don't know, he laid the groundwork for me to iron out all the dumb shit that I'm doing, and he taught me why it's important, and I don't know, it taught me sustainable habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. You want something which you can take into your further lifting career and be able to practice it for however many years that you want to obviously be in this industry for. Because there's no point getting a short-term result for for then it to kind of go backwards again.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, cool, you win your competition, or you do whatever, or you get a good nice photo shoot or something, but then it's like, but then you go back and you feel trapped. It's like, you know, it's just like this yo-yo diet and blah blah. It's, I don't know, it's just, yeah.
And again, like, it comes back to the thing, it's like there's always going to be the difficulty of, like, if someone finishes a competition, the mindset of the client or the person then might not think that they need a coach anymore.
Yeah.
When at this time they need a coach more than they did for the 30 plus weeks of contest prep.
Yeah.
So so what would happen, and I see this a lot, and then the coach probably isn't to blame, is they leave their coach, they gain a ton of weight, they then go to another coach because they think that their old one got them to that point where they've gained that weight, and then the other coach slates them for the amount of weight that they've gained.
Right.
Because they've not then done their job of keeping them accountable after a prep. Yeah. But if that person has not wanted to stay after a prep, it's always difficult. Yeah. You can't do anything, and then it comes back to the point of, like, it looks like the coach who's got them into that condition has done a bad job because they've then made them put on all this weight after 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
When in fact it's not that.
It's like if you understand bodybuilding, it's like, and like the nuance of getting out of a competition, you hopefully know that not to be true.
Yeah.
But it's probably commonly not the case.
Yeah, that's it. I'm sure there's multiple coaches who've experienced, like, clients is finishing show day and then just not checking in or just not wanting to be with them anymore because the goal's
gone.
Finished that all.
Yeah.
Getting them feeling normal is the biggest one.
I don't know, it's weird, man.
You can't control what clients want to do at the end of the day, can we?
Exactly, yeah.
We can.
Like, they're paying for a service at the end of the day, and it's like, if they don't pay, you can't afford to do that service. Like, it's a job. Like, did you see Jeff Albert's post a while ago about maybe it was a story about people expecting people to coach for free as like a trial period or some shit, or not giving it the same respect as like a medical profession, just because. Oh man, that's some bullshit. But one thing that I'd love to touch on, and this probably be the final sort of topic and point. How do you? Because you don't seem to sort of, something that I quite admire about you is you don't seem to sort of actively, I don't know, prescribe to any doctrines, or say, I do this because I prescribe to this or that or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, obviously, you know, there's also the balance though with branding, right? Like, people want to brand themselves as the keto guy or the fucking RIR guy or the whatever. And yeah, how do you go about sort of balancing that with branding yourself while not becoming dogmatic in your approach or prescribing to any doctrine?
Yeah, the keto guy made me laugh. I think it's because of the broad basis of what I've seen, and I think because I started my coaching journey never with one aspect in mind. Like, I was never a specific RAR guy, I was never a keto guy. I've always kind of been that way, and I feel like I've put that out in my content. Like, if a client doesn't get on with high carb amounts because they're constantly bloated, and we've exhausted every issue with digestion and food choices, then I'll give them higher fats, and they'll almost go into more of a quote unquote keto style. If someone is doing RIR and they're just not enjoying it, and because the enjoyment isn't there and they're not getting results, then switching them over to training to failure and potentially just pulling the amount of volume down is then a problem to get around that. So I think as a coach, we've got to have like a difference and a change for every single person and their specifics for what they need. So we can obviously be able to be broad. And I feel like that's what I've been able to do within my content, is always give rationale behind one reasoning, but then bring it back to something else. Be the only way to do things. Like, I feel like I've never really been one-minded in any approach, because I've just learned from so many different people about different topics and different ways of doing things. I've just took the best of everyone and made my own mold. Like Steve in his RAR, like, I love that, and I love that approach. Jordan Peters and training to failure, I absolutely love that. Dr. Mike, Eric Helms on nutrition. Like, if you can just take your whole broad perspective behind things and not shout to the hills that you're kind of pro one approach, you'll come across as someone who's quite willing to try different things, and you would attract everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I saw in you, and I saw as quite unique, because it's, especially in Britain, right? Everyone's quite close and beef and blah blah blah, and everyone sort of gets on their team, and everyone's very quick to be like, yeah, I'm on this team. And it's kind of like just a lot of pointless bullshit, really, and it defeats intellectual pursuits of knowledge, I guess. It's like you can't pursue the truth if you prescribe to anything dogmatic. It just ruins it, I guess.
Yeah, you want to kind of be pro every team, but then almost have understanding of everything, but then apply what you feel is best for that specific person at the time. Because we're not robots; we're all very different people, and this is what I see in clients as well. Like, just some people just don't respond well to certain things, and that for me would be the thing I would always go for. So, like, just another example is high carb gaining phases. That's something I usually try and prescribe, because I feel that that's the best approach. But then I've had people who just really just don't get on with it, and they just hate it, and then they don't end up eating their food. So it's then counterproductive, because then they're not eating the calories they need. So they need to go higher fat. So it's that thing. You need to be willing to change for everyone specific. And have a broad spectrum of the knowledge of different things to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. I love the way that you don't shout from the hills about anything. You have your nuanced opinions about things, and you put those opinions out there, I don't know, while showing the experience, and while showing, I don't know, your capability as a practitioner. It is very cool to see, man. But should we finish off here? Jack, where can people find you? Do you have any products coming out? Where can people find coaching or apply for coaching? Just repeat.
So for coaching at the minute, I've got a waiting list, just because I'm kind of like at the minute where if I take any more on, the quality of the service will just drop. So I'm quite happy just having a waiting list, and when people drop off, people come in. So my waiting list is in my Instagram bio. I usually put it on my stories as well. New products as well. I've got one coming out soon. I just need to tweak it to the point where I want it to be perfect.
Yeah.
This is I've got massive what's the word for it? Perfection syndrome. I'm making sort of like training programs which can be then developed for everyone individually. So for people that can't specifically afford the monthly cost of an online coach, there is the training program element that I want to give to people. But for me, I'm trying to add an element of personalization to it, so it's not just a program. So basically I'm trying to create programs related to back volume, chest and shoulder volume, arm volume, intermediate, beginner, advanced. So basically just to give a broad perspective on what people are looking for, and not just to give one program to masses of people. Because I think if someone's got a lagging body part that they want to work with, if I can have a program which is specific to that, and if they're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, then they can follow that through. That's what I'm trying to get to. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the minute, alongside of obviously just one-on-one work. And then I'm trying to get applications for prep next year as well. Because I think if you are looking to prep and you're wanting to get lean enough for the stage, starting with your coach early is the best and biggest thing you can do.
Completely agree.
And because at the end of the day, if we want to get you in a position where you're optimal, and if you're not optimal now, it's better to get into that position rather than waiting till February, March and saying you want to do a 20-week diet and then being disappointed with getting lean.
Yes.
So,
and it's like the conditioning nowadays in somewhere like the UK is fucking insane. So
literally, it's just mental. Everyone's arse has got lines in. It's just, even juniors, like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then what was your Instagram?
Instagram is just Gadd Fitness. And that's the only real platform I actually go on at the minute. It's just Instagram, and that's pretty much it.
Hey guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you give us a review or you really enjoyed the episode. Let me know any feedback. I'm always open to any criticism, anything like that. Reach out to me on Instagram at James_Walsham, or if you'd like to follow my business account, follow at the Hypertrophy Hub. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to help the show, there's a list of ways to do so in the show notes, but if you're wondering how, the best thing to do is just give us a review on iTunes, or just let me know how the show can be improved. Thank you very much.